there was a lot of criticism, a lot of concern, and frankly, a lot of it is correct. The Dr. Manmohan Singh was only Prime Minister in name, real parley with the lady in 10 Janpath. And you more or less make that clear in your book when you write, she being Sonia, was not just the head of the Congress party organization, she was its undisputed political leader, and then wait for it, the final decision maker on cabinet positions. Now, in any parliamentary democracy, it is the Prime Minister's prerogative to choose the ministers and give them whatever portfolio he wants. Yet here, the ministers are being chosen either by Sonia if they came from Congress or by the allies if they came from the allied parties, and they too were determining what portfolios they got, or sometimes Sonia was determining. That, to me, is an undermining of the Indian Constitution.
No, I think that's wonderfully put, but completely wrong. I mean, look, the Prime Minister, it is the Prime Minister's prerogative to send to the President the list of people he wants appointed.
He's not a postman. He's not a postman.
No, of course not. But any Prime Minister weighs things. Even if you had a Prime Minister who was head of a party, he would be or she would be looking at who are the different components of my party that I have to keep
But
happy.
Montek, look at your language.
They would be consulting.
Look at your language. The final decision maker on cabinet positions is Sonia, not the Prime Minister. That's what I'm questioning. How can someone who's not even in government, who hasn't even taken the oath of office of Prime Minister, be the final decision maker? Those are your words I'm quoting.
It's my impression, and I mean, many other people have said similar things, that, let's be clear. I mean, she won the election in 2004, leading the Congress party. She decided not to be Prime Minister. That's a separate story.
So he was then her puppet.
She put in someone who she thought would be the best person to run the show, but it was very clear that she wasn't making him head of the party. The coalition didn't regard the Prime Minister as the head of the coalition. It was Mrs. Gandhi who was running the core group and the coordination group, which brought in the left. And therefore, the constituent members of the coalition would look to her to take care of their interests.
But you've just said what I've said in different language. Let me be crude. He was the monkey, she was the organ grinder.
No, I don't think so. I think what probably is true is that maybe I should have, let me be a little self-critical. Maybe I should have phrased it that she had I think she had a deciding role in the sense that the Prime Minister and she must have sat down. I don't know, because I'm not privy to this. Prime Minister and she would have sat down and said, now, who's going to be a member of the cabinet? It's my understanding that they did not actually object to the nominees of the constituent parties. The constituent parties sort of were told, okay, you're going to get this ministry, so who do you want to run it? I mean, that's the impression I have. And as far as the Congress candidates are concerned, of course, they would have looked and discussed the relative merits of A versus B, etc. But given that she was the political leader, I assume that in this, while she would have taken his views very seriously, I mean, her approval was essential.
Montek, you're making it worse. While she would have taken his views very seriously, her approval is what counts.
Yeah.
In other words, as you said, she's the final decision maker. So the man who ran India was not the Prime Minister. For the first time in our country's history, the government appointed in his ministry was not men that he had necessarily always chosen. He may have agreed with her, but the final choice was hers. But you said it.
I think you're vastly exaggerating.
But you said it, I'm quoting you.
No, but what I'm trying to say is there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you're the political leader and you say to Manmohan Singh, look, I want you to run the government once the government is set up. Now let's
I want you to run the government whilst I've set up the government. I will appoint the ministers, you will run them.
Look, you cannot expect that somebody who's the political leader of the Congress party would actually not have a decisive say in who is going to get what job within the government.
Except it's not constitutional.
No.
It's understandable. It's not constitutional. Your constitution says quite clearly that the government is the Prime Minister's government. It's his ministry.
Yes.
He appoints the people, they serve at his
Let's-
will,
he
and they're
doesn't.
dismissed
You're
at
wrong.
his will.
You're wrong. He doesn't appoint the people. It's the president who appoints them.
Hang on a second.
And
At
he sends. What this
we're
means?
quarreling over language.
No, we're not.
The
because
president
let me
does
put
not
this
have
way.
the right
No,
to appoint
let me-
anyone other than the Prime Minister wants. You know that.
Yeah, but the important point is this. The Prime Minister, in the way I'm describing it, would have had a veto, in the sense that if Mrs. Gandhi felt that X is the right person for a particular job, he wouldn't get that job unless the Prime Minister agreed and sent his name.
No, but hang on. The
So,
Prime Minister, hang on. You're just contradicting yourself.
No.
You just now said, in the system I'm describing, the Prime Minister would have had the veto, but your words in your book are, the final decision maker on cabinet positions was Sonia. So the PM doesn't have a veto. She has the veto.
No, the constitutional mechanism provides him with the veto, because if he is not happy, look, let me step back. You may have, let's say you have an issue of a particular job and who should get it, right? Assume that Mrs. Gandhi prefers A and the Prime Minister of the day prefers B, and they have a discussion. You know, in some cases, maybe Mrs. Gandhi agrees with him. In some cases, Prime Minister agrees with her view. But in the end, it's the Prime Minister who sends those names. So you're faced with the following situation. If she were proposing someone not acceptable to him, he could just resign. So, you know, to say that he had no role is completely wrong. But to say that she should have no role is also completely wrong, and it doesn't reflect political reality. I mean, if she's the leader of the Congress party, you expect her to have that role. And there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, you can, look, government is all about sharing power. It is not a macho thing where the person at the top decides everything and nobody stands up against him. In fact, we have serious troubles if we head in that direction. You know, even when you have a majority, a sensible Prime Minister would actually balance off things within his own party and choose people who maximize the appeal of his government.
Then can I end by asking you one simple question? If it can be so easily explained, why is it that the UPA years ended with everyone believing that Manmohan didn't really run the country? Because if it could be so easily explained, why weren't you able to explain to the country that this is understandable, this is legitimate, this is a reflection of the mandate you've given, and convince them it's not unconstitutional? Because you know, as I do, that when UPA ended, everyone was convinced that Manmohan Singh was likable, but a puppet. And Modi won an election campaign hammering that point home. You know that. So, once again, why couldn't you convince the country if you had a good explanation?
No, I think they should have done a much better job of convincing the country. I have no doubt, I have no hesitation saying that. But I wasn't involved in that process. So there was no way that I could intervene and say, look, let's do it this way or let's do it that way. You know, he had in any case made it very plain in the last 4 months that he was not going to be in the running for the next Prime Minister. So in some sense, by walking out at that point, maybe he made himself, made it easy for people to think, you know, that was the case. I don't know. But the more important point you're making is that the UPA should have done a much better job of projecting what it did. And all I'm saying is that Manmohan Singh ran a government, a coalition government, in which the Congress had a very limited sort of position. And the best way, or it's useless to say, was he running a strong government? Because it wasn't a position where he could be a strong Prime Minister. The real question is, given the political cards dealt, did he do a good job? And that question is answered in terms of performance, not in terms of slogans or how good speeches you make. Now, if you get to the metric of performance, as I said, it's a 10-year period which had the highest growth rate of any before, or as it turns out, since. And it's a 10-year period where more people came out of poverty and laid the foundation of the new digital economy and brought about the nuclear deal, during which period Manmohan Singh showed that he was willing to stake his job. The notion that, you know, he was hanging on to power is simply not defendable.